Hey everybody, welcome back to the next episode of Advocacy Help Desk. Obviously, because we're all in this COVID world, we're doing these remotely instead of being in studio with our great producer, Blake. But I do, at the start of the show, always want to thank Spark Influence and Human Factor for their support of the show and putting it on and helping run these special interviews that we're having. And really, the show is about bringing on advocacy innovators and practitioners that have been doing this for a long time and talking about advocacy, talking about their job, spreading tips and best practices around so that we can all get stronger together. So Brian, who is on the desk today? Who's giving us some help?
On the desk today, Mr. Jordan Craig of the American Forest and Paper Association. I have been very lucky to know Jordan for, dear God, a decade now. Wow. And it is always interesting and always fascinating, and I always get caught up talking to him about all sorts of different things, at any of the events that we have. So Jordan, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Seems that that quarantine has served you well. We were just talking about facial hair. I am very impressed. But it's good to have you on today. Look, I love talking to you, as I was telling Andy, and I've told you many times, for the vast amount of different things that we talk about, from farming to paper, and everything in between, and all the advocacy pieces. And so, I wanted to talk today a little bit more about, obviously, all the associations are being affected differently. Yet there's still a lot of important work that each of them has to do, much like footwear is doing, much like you're doing, because these are industries that are affected in different ways. And for better or worse, you guys are a central location where those different member companies turn to figure out what's happening and how are they affected and what's coming next, and to get the real info about what's going on. And so, today I'm always fascinated by the different groups that are out there in the different associations. So I wanted to talk today just about the things that you're seeing. What is the American Forest Paper Association? What do you guys do on a day-to-day basis? And then let's dive into, okay, great, here's what a typical year might look like, but here's what this year has looked like, and here's what we're doing this year to get us in a better position moving forward.
Yeah, so the American Forest and Paper Association is a advocacy association, and our focus is to advance paper and paper recycling. So our members produce paper and pulp and all of those products that go into those type of things, as well as recycling paper products and turning them into new products. So it's the whole gamut of things, it's a very interesting process when you look at the supply chain and where everybody comes in at.
I love it. I mean, it's fascinating. So it's the idea that, and your membership is the producers and the recyclers and everybody in between.
It's the companies who are making the pulp and the paper, and it's the companies that are buying recycled paper bales and turning it into new products.
All right. So that is AF&PA. That's the background. What were your big plans for 2020?
Oh, man. All right. Well, I think everyone probably had some really cool big plans of things going on. Of course, it's an election year, right? This is the time we get everyone going for election stuff and talking to our members and trying to do mill tours and visits with congressional members. And so all that has changed. One, because of COVID, and two, because you really don't want people in those facilities, especially when majority of our facilities are considered essential, and they're working at overtime and over capacity right now. It's kind of hard just to interrupt that flow. I think we had some cool plans going on that are still continuing, so that's exciting. We just released a pizza box recyclability statement So everybody loves pizza, right? Billions of pizzas are eaten every year. But there's a lot of confusion on what to do with that pizza box when you're done. Do you trash it? Do you recycle it? Is it recyclable? Will my municipality even take it? So we just released some work around that. So that's kind of exciting. I think a lot of people are ordering more food, more pizza, and so definitely opportunity to take advantage of some of that. And then we're doing some cool stuff around paper towels as well. So with the spread of germs, right? Like people are leery about how to make sure they sanitize properly and dry their hands. And so we have a paper towel promotion campaign going on, which is kind of exciting.
I like those pieces because it shows, I mean, what every company and what every organization has to do is pivot in some way, right? And so what you're talking about then is, you're right. We've seen a huge uptake in takeout food, in pizza delivery, in Grubhub, in DoorDash, whatever it is. And so it's a real opportunity for you guys that make the packaging to then be out in front of, hey, you're worried about recycling in this time. I get that. You're ordering more things in than you ever have before. What is the industry doing with those things? And you guys are addressing that. And the same thing goes with paper towels, right? In terms of sanitary, being hygienic, et cetera. You're washing your hands more, hopefully. You're keeping your hands away from your face. I'm very bad at that. But as an industry, here's the guidance for paper towels, right? And so you're staying out in front of that. I like that a lot. Andy, you guys were doing similar things with, footwear and just sort of videos around what's going on, and giving people sort of the real talk of, here's how this affects our industry.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is associations really have to be that information hub, that trust hub, where we bring people together and share what's happening. For footwear companies, everybody, was in different states and impacted in different ways because of openings and closings. So some people who were in a closed state, we would get up people on calls and they would share how they reopened, and that would help someone else. And I don't think these are trade secrets that we're discussing or anything like that. It's just basically helping our industry. And I think, associations, as we go through this, and we have difficulty with advocacy right now, because I think we're all very much people in DC, and we want to be in front of people, and we want to advocate face to face, and we want to have our fly-ins, and we want to do all that, and all that kind of went crashing down because of COVID. And it makes it difficult to find a value proposition if you don't have what Jordan's talking about. You don't have these programs that help inform and bring people together and add value to your members. And it's just about, and I think that's the real challenge for advocacy right now, is you had some groups who only were government relations and didn't have any programs other than going to the Hill and doing this stuff. And now they're like, crap, like, what are we doing and how do we do this? And so it really is, associations have to mature and become kind of a service-oriented, building programs and tools and resources along with the government relations stuff. It has to go hand in hand. And that's the same way on the other end for professional development associations that have only been doing training and things like that. And now obviously they're doing digital, but you even have to mature on that end where you add in the government relations and add in other things. So I think, and Jordan can speak to this too, but from an association standpoint, it's an all the above approach. It's like we have to be active in almost every single thing and think about where we fit in and how we get people together on calls and share ideas. And then, and I think that's where we're at. And then I'm interested to hear from Jordan on anything that you guys have been doing around government relations and advocacy towards Capitol Hill or members of Congress. Because for us, we hit kind of a pause button, because we were like, first of all, like, how much can we actually do to move the dial right now when you got a lot of companies just trying to fight for survival? And I think that's the key thing for Congress, is making sure the money's there and things are flowing. So are they really going to listen to a footwear pitch right now over a small business pitch? Probably not. So we just kind of put a pause on it. But we still share things from time to time if something pops up that we need to share with our kind of the people we have relationships with on the Hill. But when we're looking at that, Jordan, what are you seeing in the space? Are you guys active right now, or what?
We are. And you bring up a good point. I just want to touch on what you talked about associations a little bit. You're right. Associations of all kind are kind of switching gears and doing things a little different than they haven't done in the past. And so I think there's a couple of things that associations need to think about. First of all, is fatigue, right? We're all on Zoom calls or WebEx or whatever platform you're using. And people are getting really tired and looking at a screen all day and being on camera all day. And so what are some creative and innovative ways that you can do those trainings or those meetings or whatever it is that you're having to not let your members feel fatigued?
Right.
And then I think the other part of that is, you know, if you look at a professional association that was doing a lot of trainings, well, everyone's doing a lot of trainings now. They're a dime a dozen, and they're all available. And a lot of them are free right now because people are either looking for jobs or they're trying to get people interested. And so how do you stand out? How do you make what your content, your programming, how do you make it better? Or add that piece of nugget to it that once your members and others, potential members, want to be a part of it and want to listen to what you have to say. So those are all good things that I think we have to think about in this time. And also it relates to Congress as well. We are still very active in Congress and at the state level too. So I'm doing both of those right now. Luckily, most states are out of session, but you know, some of them are coming back in because of special session, or some of them are year round. And so, you know, we're doing both and monitoring that process. I think for us it's a little different because we are typically considered an essential industry. And so it's easier for us to go talk to those members of Congress or those legislators about particular things. And then there's several pieces of legislation that's going on right now that that's still moving, that we're very involved with. And so we're still having those coalition meetings. We're still having those Capitol Hill contacts and outreach. They look a lot different, you know, whereas I may would have popped on the Hill for a 10-minute meeting or tried to bug you. Now I'm trying to get 10 minutes for a Zoom meeting.
Right.
Or it's happening via text. I see a lot of Hill staffers who are doing that now because a lot of them are remote. And so the reach is still happening. And it is very different. I kind of enjoy it because I think the expectation to wear a suit has gone down a lot. And so, you know, I can get away with being in a polo shirt or a really nice t-shirt, you know, like a solid color t-shirt for some of these meetings. And so I like that we've kind of lowered that expectation a little bit, especially for some of our legislators. But it is a challenging process because even on these Zoom calls, when you're trying to meet with the legislator or whatever, you need to figure out, okay, I got, this 10 minutes, but how can I get through what I really need to get through? Just like if you had that Hill meeting and you're sitting down face to face. Now, you don't have the person knocking on the door saying, oh, you have another meeting or so-and-so's here.
Right.
But you do have people who have often two monitors or multiple screens up, and you're competing with an email coming in, you're competing with a text message, maybe somebody's kid running in the background, or a spouse that's, you know, having a conference call 5 feet away. So it's just a different set of challenges.
Right. I love that, though. You're absolutely right. And I think that's something that associations take advantage of too. And Andy, we've talked about this before, but it adds a layer of reality to it all in terms of, you know, when the kid runs in now, it's not, you know, BBC News level worthiness. It's just every day, right? It's just, that's what happens. And, you know, the kid sits in your lap and joins the conference call because that's just how it is. And it adds a layer of, this is who I am as a person, rather than, I think that gets lost sometime on the Hill when you go up there and you're in a suit and you're trying to present your best self. But your best self doesn't necessarily encompass everything that makes you who you are. And so when you're on these Zooms or you're on these calls, you know, there's a background, there's a kid, there's noise, there's other things happening. And that's just who I am. And sometimes you can then convey that office space of like, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I do. Things of that sort that really just back up your argument rather than just Yes, I'm another suit that came to the office to show you what's going on, to talk to you about it. And here's my 10 minutes and here's our discussion. And it gets lost, right? And so I think there's something special about that.
And what I really like is that this adds a human touch, right? And I think especially in today's times in our society that we're in, it lets people know, like, hey, I'm human just like you, because you're not putting on this other persona when you're in your suit in someone's office.
Yeah, Jordan's got to be a good because he's got plants that are still alive behind him. If I have plants, maybe
well, I will say the plants are because of quarantine. So before this, I may have had one plant, and now I probably have like 36. Don't tell my wife, because she's like, how many more are you going to bring in the house?
You're just doing your part. I get it.
Exactly. I think Jordan's touched on something really interesting that everybody in Advocacy needs to stop and think about, and that's the audience that we're presenting to, congressional staffers and members. The idea of us going to Capitol Hill and having that time, there was an expectation that, they would take longer to respond on email, et cetera, because they're in the office. Congress is in session. They have all these meetings, so we understand we're not going to have an instantaneous response from a staffer on something. It may take 2 or 3 days. I think now that's changed, and I think maybe some expectations are that they should respond a lot faster or, be quicker, because what else are they doing? They're not having meetings. There's no committee hearings going on they can go to. And at the same time, if you're thinking about everybody trying to not have those in-person meetings, but email or text or do Zoom calls, I would say the staffers are probably more overwhelmed now than they've ever been. Because of these things, because they can't have an excuse of we're in session and I'm tracking votes, or we've got these, I've got a fly-in that's here from our district and we're doing these meetings. And so we almost expect that if there's no excuse. It's like my mom, when she texts me, she expects an instantaneous text back. So I have to condition her not to expect it and like respond in an hour, and like get her thinking. But it's the same way where the staffers probably like, they're on a Zoom call, a text comes in from their boss or an email comes in and they've got all this stuff. There's more information around them than ever before. There's no break to it. They're probably exhausted, just like our members, and you were talking about the fatigue, they're probably absolutely exhausted. So when we get that time with them or we do something, it really needs to be narrowed in on what it is and not, broadly chit chat, and we need to prioritize what our asks are. I don't know what you think about that, Jordan.
Yeah, well, I agree, and I would push back somewhat. I think the response time, I don't necessarily think people expect an immediate response, especially because people are working from home. Maybe they're gone to visit family and they're working from there. Maybe they're somewhere else. Maybe they have kids that they're trying to entertain as well, or do, when school was in session, they were trying to do school.
Right.
And so I think the immediate response or expectation was kind of lowered a little bit, which is mainly coming from not the Capitol Hill side, but from people like practitioners like us, because we were doing the same things at home. And so I think that was lowered a little bit. I will say they are probably overwhelmed. I've spoken to one or two of them on a personal level that I'm friends with, and they are. They have so much going on and has so much information that they need to respond to. And so I think one thing that's helpful is being direct, which, and a lot of our business emails reflect like, hey, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. And it's easy. It's okay to send an email or text messages and say, hey, where are you at with this? Or what's happening with this? And they can respond in 1 or 2 sentences and get back to you with a more detailed response if that's warranted. Whereas before,
I hope that's one of the things that comes out of this. I think you've got a good point there. I hope that's one of the things that goes out of this, because, as a software provider, what we see from a lot of clients are massive notes that they want to send to Congress, right? They want to send 17 paragraphs on why this specific bill is going to affect their industry, and this is what they want that staffer to know. And my hope is that
talking about me in this moment, because
I have no idea what you're talking about. You are you're very verbose. No, it is what, typical clients, and actually clients that aren't very adept at advocacy, are very new to advocacy, and they want to reach the Hill for the first time. And they're saying, well, now is my chance to get my folks to reach the Hill. I want them to know everything about what's going on. And so the hope is that this is exactly what you're saying, Jordan, where we can be a little more succinct in both some of these letters and these interactions and everything else, and not tell the 10-page PDF version of why this bill is bad for the industry, but really give the 2 or 3 kind of bullet points of, here's exactly what we're talking about. Here's how it affects your district. Here's a link if you want to learn more, and that's it. And I'm not going to bore you with the details, because I know that, as you said, you have kids at home, childcare is tough, your family, somebody's sick. We don't know anybody's situation right now. So the idea is simply to be succinct is to be respectful, I think, and to maximize everyone's time in a time like this, and just say, look, here's what we need. Here's where's your boss on this? Is there any way we can get movement on it, and just move on from there? And if they say no, they say no. But at least we're not dealing with 15 other things. We're just getting to the point. I like that. So you've talked a little bit about sort of some of the thought leadership pieces that you've done. And I love that, right? Going back to the pizza and the paper towel thing quickly is just saying, you guys are getting out ahead and at least providing good content for the general public at large, right? To say, look, times are changing. Here's what we as an industry are doing, and here's guidance for what you can do to help and why it's important, right? We've talked about, and I liked your Trust Hub comment earlier. And the trade secrets piece you were talking about, Andy, not that you're, getting these folks on calls together, trade secrets be out the window here, but how are you reopening, right? What are you doing differently for your industry to get back out there quickly? Let's talk for a second about some of the visits, in-person visits that you were having before. Obviously not a possibility. Are you doing some digital visits with legislators in terms of just showing them the factory floor, having somebody walk around with a phone maybe? Anything of that kind of ideas?
Yeah, well, we haven't, our association hasn't done any of that yet.
Okay.
I've spoken with some members who are doing some virtual town halls. And so they're able to bring in a group of employees and maybe have the staffer or the legislator on Zoom and kind of have this little virtual town hall thing going on. And then I think some of them are experimenting with ways to do kind of like virtual walkthroughs on, here's what's happening and here's what's going on. I don't know what that looks like. I know this is something that, Brian, you and I have talked about for years, right? Like, how do we take Congress to where we are, because they can't necessarily be on that farm or on the facility floor or wherever that is. But I think there's a new piece to that, and it's not just watching a video, but it's watching something that can be interactive. So maybe I can, be shown what's going on and talk to one of the employees as well at that time and say, hey, how's your job been affected by what's going on? What can I do to help you?
I like that idea. I know, Andy, some of your folks are doing some things like that with, getting folks closer to the floor itself and folks that are affected, and just saying, look, why is this job important and what kind of work are you doing and things of that sort.
Yeah, it's stories, right? I mean, I think that we naturally in advocacy, a lot of us go to our bullet points and go to our data sets and percents and tax revenues and all that, because Congress, to a certain extent, and state legislators are numerical, right? Legislative bodies appropriate money. And so a lot of times we think that connects, but we oftentimes forget that our audience are general public consumers like we are. They see Coke ads, they see, they use Facebook, they interact with products, they love to go to the Nike shop to see new product out. They're just like us. And so I think we in some ways hurt ourselves by not sharing stories more rather than that data set. And I think this is a time where we can, we're talking about having our Zoom backgrounds like Jordan has in his home and humanizing ourselves. And I think it's actually easier now than ever to tell our personal stories to legislators and share impacts, because we're all in the same situation. But I think it behooves us to think more about storylines and telling those stories, and having it from a worker perspective, and breaking it down from a company level. Like, I think that's the other thing too, is that, we strive for big numbers. So we think company level, but I think we should break it down to line level and to worker level, and let them, and not restrain. That was always the thing too, is when you do like a Hill meeting, you try to like get people trained, and you're like, you say these things and you talk about this, and all of a sudden they start getting afraid that they'll say the wrong thing. And I think that this is a great time to just unleash people and just be like, share from your heart what your experiences is, what your concerns are. And, this is the bill we care about, and this is why, and we want you to share this, but anything else is open game at this point. And I think that's the difference between being remembered by a legislator or a policymaker and being just another data set that they had to go through on the day. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, Andy, you bring a great point. I mean, we've talked about storytelling for a long time, right? Like, you guys have a huge, I don't know if it's a page devoted on the help desk website about dynamic storytelling. So, one of the things that I did mention this earlier, one of the things that we did, we have been capturing video of some of our employees, our member company employees, for the last year or two. And it just, the great opportunity happened to come up, and we were able to do a thank you video to the workers in the pulp and paper mills. And so that was a really cool piece that we were able to create. And it went down to that macro line level that you were talking about, right? So like, employees would talk and it would say, hey, this is a line manager, this is a paper machine operator, and they would say what they're doing, and we were able to show video of some of the process and them in their environments. And so I think it really helped show that, like, hey, maybe, we see doctors and nurses and first responders in this space all the time. But one thing that we don't necessarily think about are the people who are making the toilet paper and the paper towels and the cardboard boxes, that all the ordering that's coming in, the food packaging that, that you're ordering your food and it's coming in. And so being able to like see their story and see how they're essential and they're still making do. And, I think Walmart released a thank you video to their workers. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was actually really cool, and it was like all shot on different phones. And again, it was a great way to highlight workers who don't necessarily get thanked every day. And so when you look at like what associations can do, I think that makes companies and feel really good about like, hey, they're thankful for the work that my employees are doing, and they're helping honor that.
I like that a lot, Jordan, because it's absolutely right. The association isn't the hero here, right? The people who can make a difference are right, exactly. But I think that's the problem that we run into too much is there are a lot of associations out there that feel like they're the heroes of the industry, and really they're the conduit from the people who are doing the work to the folks who can make a difference. And so part of this job is taking the stories that you've captured. And I love also to side like that you're capturing these stories far in advance and then figuring out how to use them when the time is right. That's fantastic. Capturing those stories of those workers and then, putting them into the place where then the legislator can also be sort of the hero of the story by actually passing the bill or doing what you're asking them to do. And so you're just that intermediary conduit as an association from taking folks who are doing the work and the folks who can make a difference with their votes to getting the pieces together. And I think that that's great that you can then take those videos, make those thank you stories. As you said, Walmart putting together that piece to thank their workers who are doing the work and those different pieces. I mean, that's what it's all about. I like it. Look, there's a lot of stuff here. What is next on AF&PA's sort of list in terms of like, you mentioned that there are we talked for a minute before, and that there are state governments that have sort of paused recycling now. I didn't know that. What does that mean in the long run? And what are you guys seeing as ways to what's your next move?
Yeah. So It wasn't necessarily state governments, but local municipalities may have paused their recycling for a period, and I think a lot of it was just out of concerns of we don't know what to do, what's happening, and so and that can present a huge problem for our industry, who needs that recycled paper to create new products.
Right.
And continue being sustainable. So, one of the things we did was we were able to kind of create this list of municipalities who had stopped recycling, and we sent letters to them, and we talked about, first and what's most important is the safety is number one. So the safety of the workers, for as a COVID sickness standpoint, and a safety and like a work safety, that's important. And we want to make sure that we get that fiber. We need that fiber. We need that material, but we want to make sure that it's being done in a safe and healthy way. So, please continue doing that again. And here's what that looks like. And I think for it varies based on where you're at, right? Like some people may have facilities that are, I don't know if you guys have ever been to your local sorting facility or dropped off and kind of glimpsed in, but it's not always easy to be social distance and be 6 feet apart, right? And so how do you make that happen? How do you provide them with the PPE that they need when there's a shortage? And we should be, saving it for, we were told in the beginning, save it for healthcare workers and stuff like that. So, and then I think the second part of that is how do you handle the overload that you may be getting? So people are at home. A lot of offices are closed. And so people's recycling bins are overflowing. If your house looked anything like mine, we had a ton of boxes stacked up.
Right.
And other stuff. And how does the municipality deal with the influx of material that they're getting to be able to process it and process it in a safe way?
I like it. I mean, so you're taking an education campaign to the municipalities of just reinforcing what, yes, pausing is an option, but know that here's what we're doing to keep everybody safe. Here's what it means to recycle. Just a reminder of X, Y, and Z. And so you're putting pieces together. It's what Andy was been talking about too. Is you're capturing this information early so you can repurpose it as needed when needed. And so you can talk about the safety of the situation. And you can put those sort of mini packages together for the municipality to tell them, look, we understand your concerns, but here's why, and here's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I like that. So final questions here. How did you get into advocacy?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Storytelling.
Yeah, I know. Wow. It's kind of a crazy story. So you mentioned my farm background. I have a degree in agriculture, and I thought, like most people who are in Washington, I was going to come to Washington and be a big deal overnight. And that didn't happen. Surprise, surprise. And I started working for a trade association, and I was working in their grassroots and policy shop and not knowing what any of that meant. And I happened to come in at a really pivotal time for the advocacy space, and I fell in love with it, and the rest is history. So I'm still in it, and I enjoy it. And there's a ton of different sectors within the advocacy grassroots space, right? Like, I came in when it was called grassroots. Now we call it advocacy. So, I always try to throw in the grassroots piece when I can. But there's a ton of different pieces that are involved in that. And what does that look like? How does that make that work? And how can we telling our story, or I should say, how can we tell our story? Because I think that we haven't done a great job at telling it. But then once we tell that story, how can we continue in telling it in a dynamic way that captures people's hearts and minds and makes them want to do whatever we're asking them to do?
I love it. I love it. No, I mean, it just shows like whatever your background is, whether you majored in farming or political science, it doesn't really matter, right? You come here to DC to make a difference and to be part of an association that's making a difference, and you fall in love with advocacy and telling people stories to make something happen. I mean, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's a good point too, because we're when we think about advocacy, there's a formula, right? We have a structure, so there's a science to it, but there's the really good advocacy is an artwork, because what we're trying to do is paint pictures and be persuasive and tell those stories that move people, and that's very different than a science-based approach. It's really artistic in some ways, of really having that expression and getting that in return, getting that persuasion to work and engage with somebody on a different level. And I think that's really why we have this show, and why we had Jordan come on today, and why we have other guests come on, is we talk about the science, but it's that artwork that we're looking for. It's these moments of real genius where we have guests like Jordan come on and share really good insights that make us pause and think about it. And I think that's where we get better together as advocacy professionals, is hearing this stuff. Right, Brian?
Love it. All right. Well, look, Jordan, it was fantastic talking with you as always.
Thanks for having me.
Love the insight. Love these pieces. I mean, you're talking about fatigue and getting creative. You're talking about standing out with trainings. You're talking about Congress and state level, even texting Hill staffers that you know. And
pizza boxes.
Again,
yes.
And pizza boxes, yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask you your favorite pizza. I don't know. Anyway, but just your, all the different ways, as Andy said, as you said, right? It's an art and a science. It's having puzzle pieces, and the puzzle changes every day, and just figuring out how to put it together for that day and that cause. And I think that's what draws us all to advocacy, and I love it. So thank you again for joining us. Andy, do you want to take us out?
Yeah, folks, thanks for watching this or listening to this latest episode. You can find us on YouTube at advocacyhelpdesk.com. You can go through our portal that way, on our website. We are also fully audio on every single podcast audio platform, from Spotify to iTunes. So you can listen to us on the go. You can look at our beautiful faces on YouTube. However you want to consume the content, please consume it. Please share this with other people in advocacy. I think the more we have these conversations, the more helpful it is to every single one of us. And as always, if you're having a struggle or challenge with your advocacy work, drop us a line on advocacyhelpdesk.com. We'll partner, or we'll pair you with someone in advocacy that has an expertise in that specific challenge to help you out for free, because that's what we're all about, is helping people. Iron sharpens iron. And so with that, thank you for watching. For wherever you're at, whatever situation you're in, please stay healthy, please stay safe, and please keep advocating. We're out.